Chapter 6. Thien's slender hand pushed the makeshift woven bamboo door open. No matter how much he was disgusted by it, his body had demanded to use the toilet. He jumped out and took a deep breath of fresh air. Whenever he sat down on the cesspool latrine, he had to hold his breath. Why did he have to suffer this much? He walked back to the front of the hut, wanting to pick up his towel to take a bath at the earthen jar since it got warmer in the afternoon. He came to a sudden halt as he spotted a tall, massive figure in camouflage pants and green khaki t-shirt bending down to pick up pieces of paper that were blown by the wind and landed in the middle of the steps. The captain held up a drawing by the Akka students. The tanned, handsome face looked up. His eyes met with the teacher's, and his lips lifted into a smile. "This is the first time I saw a teacher skipping his own class." Thien glared at the man who always shot him a sarcastic remark. "Today was the orientation day. The class starts tomorrow." Thick, straight eyebrows cocked, the captain was skeptical, thinking that the younger man was incompetent. He handed the drawings that had fallen from the balcony to the newbie teacher. "May I know the curriculum Crew Crayon is planning for the children?" The city boy whipped around as the officer teased him with his new nickname. Perhaps the two rangers on duty wasn't only standing guard but also spying on him. There was no other way that the head of the barrack would find out about the class this quick. "Are you the headmaster or something? Why do I have to report to you? You think you could just play around with teaching? If your instructions isn't good enough, I will deport you." The low, deep voice sounded like he meant it, and Thien's nerves snapped. "Okay, I don't have any curriculum right now. This is what you want to hear so you could kick me out, isn't it?" "Why have you come here?" Captain Phupha stated every word as he gazed intensely into the stubborn light brown eyes. "Like I want to stay. The mattress was rock hard, the mosquitoes were savage, the food sucked. If it wasn't for his boredom of the city life, he wouldn't have concocted this stupid plan." Tull was right. He was stuck at home for far too long and had lost his mind. To hell with the different world. It brought him nothing but troubles and headache. Thien bit his lips and brushed his shoulders against a massive officer as he walked up the stairs. The captain turned around and shouted at him. "Let me know when you're done packing, so I'll send you to the city with the driver." "And I shall be done with this burden," Phupha shouted in his head, angry as he had never been before. He crossed his arms and took a deep breath, counting 1 to 100 at the stairs until the noises in the hut died down after the younger man finished throwing things here and there. He paused for a moment, uncertain, and decided to check up on the other man. He halted as a crumpled piece of paper that was blown by the wind hit the tip of his foot. The intense eyes looked over at the narrow balcony and saw a few open textbooks, along with a scratch pad full of scribbles in Thai and English. He didn't need any fancy words to describe what he saw and realized that he was seeing the evidence of a man's effort. Phupha never wanted to slap himself before. He bent down to pick the crumpled piece of paper and quickly stepped into the hut. Thien stood still with his back towards the other man. Yet the thin shoulders were shaking, and it was from the cold weather. The young man was looking at the backpack that was half-heartedly stuffed with his clothes and personal belongings. His right hand was holding a pastel notebook at his side, an item that didn't quite match his personality. Thien squeezed Thorfinn's diary until it bent. The peaceful and content life in the outback described in this diary was a reminder that he was just a loser. No matter where he went, he would never feel at home and be as happy as she was. "I shouldn't have come here." He was a mere stranger from the city, unfitting this simple rural life. I didn't mean to make you feel that way, Captain Phupha said gently. But you were right. I am everything but a teacher. Every time someone calls me a teacher, you know how overwhelmed it feels? Thien lost control over his emotions. He knew his words were giving away what an amateur he was. A minute passed as they stood silent. Thien became aware as the tall figures took a step to stand behind him. The young captain bent down, and the thick, beautiful lips whispered something right above the white tip of his ear. You don't have to be a teacher. Try to be a brother to them. It's up to you if you want to consider them as your family. But the children need a real teacher, like the other volunteers from the foundation who did their job. You don't have to be like anyone else. Phupha took a slender hand in his hand and put the crumpled paper on it. With all your knowledge and skill, I'm sure you know more than reciting A, B, C. Thien couldn't help smiling at the tease. You know nothing about me. I can't even memorize the Thai alphabets. How many volunteer teachers have been here before? I believe the children know all the alphabets better than you do. All volunteer teachers who came uphill always started with the letters. Some didn't complete a month before packing their bags and ran away even before the kids could spell a new word. Captain squeezed a thin hand. They come to the class not to pass an exam. It's just one tiny chance for them to learn about the outside world and to have hands-on experience from volunteers like you. So, calling yourself a teacher or not doesn't really matter. Thien pulled his hand away from the officer's warm seize that was creeping towards his heart, feeling embarrassed. Why are you giving me a long speech? You don't want me to leave, do you? He shot a retort out of habit, but the other man was stunned as if being hit by a curse. Phupha cleared his throat as if something got stuck there. Of course I don't. It costs a lot out of the military's budget to pick someone up or send someone away. Thien snorted. The captain never wore his heart on his sleeves, so he turned around and faced the guy. All right, I'm not leaving. He looked away from the intense stare. And this is because I took pity on such a poor barrack like yours. Phupha was pulling a stern face until it felt numb because he didn't want the brat to see him smile. He watched as the slender form went back to unpacking his belongings quietly for a moment, then muttered lowly, Hurry up, I'm taking you to the market. The boy's eyes lit up as he turned around and looked at the soldier, forgetting about the task at hand. He didn't actually like a smelly place like a wet market, but he didn't want to hurt the captain's feelings, didn't want the invitation to go in vain. Let's go now, I'm ready. He jumped up and pushed the broad back towards the door. Captain Phupha shook his head in exasperation at the younger man's mood swing, but he walked out of the hut as told. Thien was just a boy, one that wasn't too hard to handle, after all. The outdated motorcycle, stay-at-home mom model, parked under the shade of the big tree in front of the volunteer teachers' accommodations. Phupha pulled it away, straddled, and nimbly started the engine. When he saw how the one who wanted to go sightseeing was standing still, he patted the back of the seat as a signal. Hop on. What are you waiting for? Thien grimaced. The officer alone nearly took up all the space. If he took the back seat, there would be no space left between them, and they could just become one body, or else he would fall off the motorbike on his butt. Am I still going to be alive by the time we arrive at the market? He muttered, and the captain's canine ears caught it. Stop whining. There's no limousine for you in the middle of the jungle. If you want to go, hop on, or just go back into the house. I know, stop ordering me around. Thien couldn't imagine how being a wife to this man would be like. Phupha was too stern and commanding to attract any woman anyway. Perhaps he'd be better off if he married some recruits in his troop. Thien cursed the man in his mind before straddling the empty space on the back of the motorcycle. Phupha turned the accelerator handles, and the vehicle shot forward. It was too fast for the passenger to hold a balance, and Thien cried out loud before hunching down and holding on tight around the captain's waist. He didn't know if he was hallucinating, but he heard a low rumble of laughter in the breeze. The preppy city boy was frustrated that he had lost his cool, so he dug his 10 fingers into the rider's hard, tight six-pack. "That hurts." Phupha frowned and let go of a hand from the handle to pull at the hands that were pinching his stomach, and their hands were wrestling until the vehicle almost skittered off track and went into the forest. The troop's commander scolded the younger man. "Stop fooling around. If you want to become a forest spirit that bad, I'm going to give it to you." Thien pulled a wry face, straightened up, and shouted into the officer's ear. "Oh my, I'm so scared, Captain." Phupha let out another heavy sigh that he felt the air was drained from his lungs. His lifespan would be 20-30 years shorter if this brat stayed to complete his semester. "Sit still." He issued a simple order and locked Thien's thin hands in his free hand and pressed them to his stomach. The steep rolling road was rough and grainy. Thien got tired of having to sit straight, so the shapely head with silken brown hair rested against the broad shoulder. The scent of the scorching sun that surrounded the young captain calmed him down and made him feel secure. The almond eyes looked aimlessly at the verdant view that was moving along the speed of the motorcycle. Picturesque views of winter flower plantations that cascaded and stretched towards the horizon on the rolling hills were priceless. When the villagers who worked on the farm and plantations heard the familiar engine, they looked up and waved at the massive officer to greet him. The thin lips smiled as Thien remembered one line from Crew Thorfinn's diary. "We're not related, but we're family. You'll find the land of happiness anywhere. It depends on whether we become a part of it." The main road was a 2-lane asphalt route that connected many districts. It was built following His Majesty King Bhumibol or King Rama's wishes to encourage communities in remote areas to be self-sufficient. He bestowed the initiation of royal projects, starting with royal agriculture stations, to experiment with winter plant species. Experts were sent to teach the hill tribes to grow industrial crops to replace addictive plants. The late king had also ordered governmental sectors to give continuous support to the projects. They came to an intersection with a wooden sign with letters in white paints, Kad Huai Nam Jen, the marketplace with an arrow to give a direction. The motorcycle took a turn and rode along for 3 kilometers before reaching its destination. This wet market could be found in cities across Thailand. There were food shops where people sat down to have a proper meal, and shops that put plastic tables covered on the ground to sell their products. What was a peculiar sight was the hill tribes with baskets on their backs filled with fresh fruits and vegetables that they took downhill on foot to sell at this market. Thien, who walked side by side with the captain, stopped in his track as he spotted the familiar tall, lean form waving at them from the distance. Captain Vasant, M.D., in his green uniform with 3 stars and army emblem on a label, jumped out of the official jeep that he drove to work in downtown Shanghai since morning. The volunteer teacher glanced at the man next to him. "You already have an appointment with Dr. Nam. Why bother bringing me along?" Phupha met his eyes that shone like a tiger and let out a heavy, exasperated sigh. "I didn't ask him to meet us here. He came on his own. It was my intention to bring you to the market today. Am I hearing things?" Thien rolled a finger in his ear as if he didn't believe what he heard. "You wanting to take me out?" "Yes.
You should buy something to make simple meals, and don't wait around for supply from Lei's house.
The answer made all the good, fuzzy feelings vanish into thin air.
I can't cook. Now you can't, but you have to try. You can't just sit around waiting for someone to service you like back home.
Captain Phupha shut his mouth before he slipped the last word and changed the subject.
Just keep cooking. You'll get used to it.
Dr. Vasant was wearing an amused smile on his face as he approached the two, who were in the middle of a heated argument.
What? You two will cook? Should I go this evening to have a bite? I'm off duty. No, I'm not going to.
Before the city boy finished his sentence, a big arm wound around his neck and a hand closed over his lips.
We're going to have dinner at Thien's house, all right.
Phupha said, dragging the struggling young man towards the market, leaving the military doctor to frown. Dr. Vasant was surprised to see the two getting closer than he'd expected them to be. Finally, Thien broke free from the captain's strong embrace. He glared with a vengeance at the massive guy.
Are you out of your mind? You know the boiled eggs I made cracked? I don't know how to cook rice. You want to starve me to death, don't you? Today you'll learn how to cook.
The commander of a company locked his hand around the thin wrist so the younger man couldn't break away. He took him along, ignoring Thien's protests. A seller was lifting fish sauce, cooking oil, salt, and sugar portion in a plastic bag out of the back of a roof truck that was modified into a small grocery shop. Phupha pointed at plates and utensils, and the seller put 2 sets of them in a plastic bag. Thien tapped on his thin wallet, wondering if the shops around here accepted credit cards. The seller told them the price that were more expensive than downtown rate because sellers had to add gasoline prices for transportation into the numbers. As soon as he saw Captain Phupha pull out some banknotes, he protested.
Hey, no, stop it, it's on me.
But he instantly shut his mouth when the massive captain answered.
You're still getting money from your parents, so let the adult pay.
The youngest son of a wealthy family shrugged nonchalantly. All right, then, since you asked. But 3 seconds later, he became furious.
What do you do when a senior one gives you something?
Phupha asked in a natural tone.
I'll pay.
He fetched his wallet and pulled out a 500 baht note.
Is it that hard to lift your 2 hands?
It wasn't just Thien who was taken aback. Even Dr. Vasant, who knew the captain for a long time, became speechless. His friend was a heavy hitter who was economic with his words, the typical manly man who didn't pay attention to trivial details, especially when it came to mannerism. The sharp eyes narrowed, pondering, and the cogs in his mind worked silently to put things together. The new teacher balled his fists and relaxed, and did it repeatedly for a while before he decided to bow his head down and slapped his palms together into a quick V.
Are you happy now, Captain?
He snapped. Phupha's lips tucked into a light smile, and he handed the plastic bag at Thien, then grabbed his hand and started dragging him along again. They stopped to buy rice, eggs, from fresh to salted and preserved ones, along with dried salted beef that would be kept for some time. Dr. Nam didn't let the chance slip, and he paid for Thien to get a beautiful V from the boy.
Get that thing too.
Thien pointed towards flavored instant noodles.
If you eat too much monosodium glutamate, your brain will shrink. You think I should only eat eggs and boiled rice all the time? Today you buy vegetables to cook, next time you can ask for homegrown veggies from Lei's backyard and boil them. Captain Phupha, are you actually staff from the public health department?
He started to lose his temper, for real, since the other man put so many restrictions on him. He wasn't even his father or brother. The third person who was witnessing the staring contest cut in. Come on, Phu. Trust me, I'm a doctor.
Even if Thien eats 10 packs of instant noodles, his brain will be fine. Alright.
Finally, the meticulous captain allowed Thien to buy 2 packs of instant noodles with pork flavor. But when he was handing the younger man the noodle packs, Thien was grimacing even deeper. The thick eyebrows frowned. Why is he so hard to please, this little wealthy brat?
Now what? Nothing.
Thien gave a short, dismissive answer. No matter what Dr. Nam said, the captain always followed his words. That was annoying and upsetting.
Are we done? I want to go home.
Seeing Phupha nod, Dr. Vassant grabbed the bag in the volunteer teacher's hand to carry for him.
Thien can come with me so he can have a comfy ride, not having to squeeze in the same space with a monster like you.
Thien instantly agreed because he was afraid the 2 friends would grab the chance to ride in the car together and let him take the motorcycle. The captain watched as the city boy wound his arm around the doctor and dragged him away with a sour look on his face, as if he was swallowing the bitterest cactus. You came with me, why don't you come home with me then? Even if Captain Vassant, MD, was a good conversationalist, Thien was feeling uncomfortable sharing a ride with him alone. Perhaps he wasn't certain about the nature of the relationship between the 2 captains. Whether they were more than good friends, the driver hummed along with a country song on the radio.
I haven't had a chance to ask. You've been here for a few days. Are you feeling comfortable about everything? It's quite alright. I'm doing fine.
The young doctor slapped his knee as if something came to him.
I know it! Captain Phupha took the role of a caretaker and prepared everything, from ordering a soldier to put the water in the earthen jar for you and taking you to the shop. If it was some other male teachers, he wouldn't give a damn. That's why so many volunteers before you had packed their bags and left.
Thien turned to look at the clear, radiant face of the man next to him.
You and the captain seem close. Well, it's normal we're close. I've known him since the first time we joined the unit. Once he was restationed at the borders, I asked for a transfer too, because I was afraid he wouldn't have a drinking companion.
Vassant laughed heartily and shot a trick question.
What about you? Have you known the bastard before? I remember that in the evening you arrived, we were watching a boxing match on TV. Once he got the phone call, he just got up and left, rushing out with his motorcycle to see you.
The son of a former general felt goosebumps all over his body. His hunches and the probability were warring inside his mind. If his family had detected his location, why didn't they send someone to take him back?
Did you have any idea who made the phone call to the captain? He said Dad, but as far as I remember, his dad has passed away a long time ago.
Thien forced out a smile. He feared that must have been his dad.
Is that so? I never met him before, but I heard about him from someone I know.
The doctor cocked his thick eyebrows as his curiosity sparked.
Who would that be? Thorfinn?
The name that came out of his mouth was followed by total silence.
Oh, Crew Thorfinn.
Dr. Vassant's voice trailed off after a few moments.
May she rest in peace. Phupha and I wanted to join the chanting ceremony at her funeral, but the Foundation told us that her cousin already cremated her body in a rush.
The man who admitted to knowing the young woman nodded.
I know. Her cousin isn't a good one.
He still remembered the frustration from arguing with the wicked auntie.
Don't tell me you became a volunteer teacher because of Thorfinn.
Dr. Vassant teased the younger man.
If she was still alive, this would turn out to be a tragic love triangle.
A love triangle between the doctor, Thorfinn, and the captain, it was. Thien wanted to shout at the other man.
Well, certainly not with me in it.
Vassant glanced at the handsome face, the fair complexion, the straight nose with a slight slant tip, and the cupid's bow lips of the new teacher, and his lips tugged into a knowing smile.
Don't worry. Someone like Trajan wasn't really Phu's type. But someone like you are? The younger man wanted to slap himself as soon as the words left his lips. The doctor's eyes grew wide as if he was in shock. 5 seconds later, he burst out laughing. Thien heard a faint murmuring from the doctor with a giggle. It was something like, good. Before he calmed down with a big smile on his face. You have to ask him yourself. I'm not that curious. Alright, so you're not that curious. Let's talk about something else, shall we? Vassan changed the topic, fearing that the grimacing young man would bite his neck off if he kept pushing. The jeep stopped in front of a narrow road, the same route Sergeant Jod had taken Thien to his accommodation. The young doctor helped him carrying the bags full of goods from the market to the hut. He later told Thien he'd return to the camp and change into casual wear, and he'd be back as soon as he could. Thien sat down on the litter under the hut, waiting for Captain Phupha, and looked at cookingware that was placed face down, feeling tired. Maybe he had to resort to eating instant noodles every day from now on. The engine roared in the distance, and the sound neared as it came uphill. Soon the stay-at-home mom motorcycle showed up. The tall officer got off and walked towards the hut with more bags of supplies that he bought some more after Thien had left. What's wrong? The thick eyebrows twisted into a bow as he caught the sharp, intense glare from the younger man. I just wanted to look at you. Is that a problem? The spoiled young man retorted. Phupha shook his head, muttering to himself that he shouldn't have asked. He tried to ignore it, putting the bags down and pulling out the brazier. Once he finished, the captain beckoned the younger man to come closer. I'll show you how to light the fire and you can boil the water from the bath. Hearing about hot bath, Thien sprang to his feet. He wasn't upset when Phupha asked him to get the tools, and even did it with enthusiasm. As all the equipment was ready, the captain asked him to put firewood under the brazier. The fussy officer took a torch made of oil, mixed with bark, wrapped in a spathe of ripe areca nut, and used the lighter to light the fire at the tip. He stuck the torch at the firewood and asked the observer to help fan the fire. The flame flared up and burnt the woods until they turned white. Thien's eyes grew wide with excitement. At the scout camp, they used a gas stove to heat things, so no one really had experience using a classic brazier such as this. Have you ever cooked rice with a crossbeam or poured the water from the pot? The young captain asked, and the immediate response was a quick headshake. He let out a long sigh before issuing an order. Go fetch a bucket of water. Thien used a plastic bucket and took the water from the earthen jar at the back of the hut. The massive man who didn't appear to be able to cook started teaching him how to clean the rice before cooking. He followed the verbal instructions, starting from measuring the rice they'd bought and put it into the dented aluminium pot, putting in water, gently whirling the rice with a hand a few times, and draining the murky white water from the pot. The process was repeated one more time until the murky rice water became clear. Then he filled the water of the pot and put the pot on the brazier. Why do you call it rice cooking with a crossbeam? Isn't it going to turn into boiled rice? The city boy asked out of inexperience. Phupha picked up a halved 60-centimeter long bamboo stalk that rested against the pot and held it up. This is a crossbeam. When the rice is roughly cooked, you insert the beam into the lid holder and the handles to hold them in place. Then you drain the water for the rice turns into soft and becomes boiled rice as you asked. 15 minutes later, the officer let Thien open the lid and fluff the rice with a paddle before scooping it up to check. If the rice is fluffy and not hardened, it was well cooked. Phupha demonstrated using the crossbeam by sliding it under the lid and handles, and lifted the pot up to drain the boiling water. When he opened the lid, hot steam gushed out, revealing the nice, fluffy, cooked rice ready to eat.
Thien's lips split into a wide grin, feeling strangely proud of himself.
It's not that hard. The instructor snorted. Wait until you cook it and don't end up with burnt rice. Don't underestimate me. Better than overestimating you. Now let's move on to the dishes before the doctor's here.
Thien wasn't annoyed with the first part of the sentence, but the latter part made him want to throw a sack of rice over the officer. All the captain cared about was the doctor. A pretty and nice girl like Thorfinn had an unrequited love not because she wasn't good enough, but because she didn't know she had fallen for a gay guy.
We don't have enough sugar.
Phupha looked at the sugar that was sold in a portion in a plastic bag, and looked at the younger man, puzzled at the cryptic statement. Thien sneered.
I thought you were going to cook sugary dishes, like sweet stir-fried veggies or syrup soup. What nonsense are you babbling about? Put the pan on the fire, Crew Crayon.
The young captain gave a stern order, and the younger man gave him a mocking salute. Dr. Vasant arrived at the teacher's hut half an hour later because he had been afraid a war would erupt in the middle of the kitchen. He dressed in a simple t-shirt, a pair of slacks, and a pair of flip-flops, and sped up the motorcycle to reach the destination as soon as he could. Yet, what he saw before him was a scene of two bickering lovers who were getting on each other's skin. The doctor scratched the back of his neck, not knowing how to behave. He didn't know whether to intervene or leave them be to greet the villagers instead.
I came at the wrong time, he jokingly muttered to himself.
Unfortunately, Captain Phupha, who turned to pick up the plates, caught the sight of the doctor and shouted,
Come on in, have a seat, Doc.
Vasant, who reluctantly followed the order, looked at the dishes on the litter. Rice, darkened and wilted stir-fried morning glory, plain soup with squash, and a plate of burnt omelette that his best friend just put down. The guests started to sweat at the sight of the food.
They all look, yummy.
Phupha cast a sideways glance at his friend, recognizing the sarcasm.
Well, you've asked for a meal cooked by Nong Thien. Here it is. So, if I finish everything, don't mind later?
The doctor looked into the eyes of the man who looked away, as if he was plagued by a guilty conscience. Thien looked at both men in bewilderment, not understanding what they were arguing about. He looked down at the meal he cooked and felt resigned, yet shrugged. There was nothing he could do about it. He didn't know how to cook, and the results looked edible enough.
Are you hungry, P-Dog?
Yes, I am. Let's eat.
Vasant answered and enthusiastically put the rice into the plates, unaware of the intense glare from his tall friend. The fluffy rice cooked by the cross-beamed method started to harden up a little, but it was still warm enough to eat. The doctor used a fork to scoop up the morning glory and put it into his mouth as a starter. He choked on it and started coughing violently. Still, he forced a smile to the new chef, who looked at him expectantly.
It's, kind of good, Nong Thien, but I think it's a bit too salty. Have you spilled the whole bottle of fish sauce on the veggie?
He didn't spill the bottle, he poured the whole bottle on purpose.
Phupha cut in and pushed the omelette towards his bestie.
Eat this. I stopped him before he poured another bottle.
What a man-pleaser. Thien glared at both officers and sneered.
I was afraid you guys would be diabetic.
Vasant let out a dry laugh.
I can't pick between having diabetes or kidney disease.
You cooked it, so you're responsible to finish the rest of the plate.
The captain gave a stern order to the younger man, who glowered at him.
Fine,
Thien retorted, and put the troublesome stir-fried morning glory into his mouth. The fish sauce's strong odor and the salty taste exploded and made it impossible to swallow. Phupha looked at the brat's scowling face and let out a long sigh. Before Thien had to suck it up and finish the rest of the veggie, His spoon hit another one mid-plate. The younger man watched as Captain Phupha scooped all of the stir-fried morning glory in fish sauce into his own plate, mixing it with rice and munching on it with a deadpan look on his face, and he became speechless. Dr. Vasant, who saw the whole scene, whistled. That was such a gentleman move. Thien's thin lips opened as if to say something, then pressed tight. He lowered his head, feeling his cheeks burn. The first dinner he'd ever cooked had suddenly turned awkwardly pink-hued. Even if the good-humored doctor was trying to diffuse the situation, the air was still heavy with something unamiable. Once the two guests who had invited themselves to the dinner finished washing the dishes and putting themselves down on the galvanized iron tray, they excused themselves for the night. Thien came to see them off in front of the hut, watching two stay-at-home mom motorcycles right away, feeling as if someone had finally lifted the whole mountain off his chest. The city boy lit the rest of the firewoods in the brazier. The flames suddenly flared up, and he put in more wood. He put the kettle on the stove and climbed up into the hut to prepare for his bath kit, and closed when his eyes caught a glimpse of a plastic bag on the door frame. Thien grabbed the bag and opened it, wondering if the brute had put a grenade in there. But as he pulled the item out, he became speechless once again. It was a fresh, clean, new mosquito net. He looked down at his own wrist, the one that the captain had held tight against his stomach, and saw reddened mosquito bites all over it. Warmth washed over him, and his heart fluttered. The slender form held the net to his chest, slumping down on the floor in a squatting position, and he started rubbing his face and not knowing how to handle the overpowering emotions that were washing all over him.